Did you ever wonder why they call a novel coronavirus a novel coronavirus? Folks have known about coronaviruses in animals since the 1930s and in human beings since the 1960s. That's not very novel. In fact, before a novel coronavirus emerged in China in December, first described as a pneumonia of unknown etiology. That sounds really nice. But so similar to the SARS virus that physicians treating the new disease began to use that template to identify patients with a novel coronavirus. The CDC had a fact sheet that contained 4 common human coronaviruses that had initial symptoms very similar to the flu, just like a novel coronavirus, and which also had no vaccine, just like a novel coronavirus. And we never got a vaccine for those. And in 2003, when a new coronavirus emerged in Hong Kong, most people just called the severe acute respiratory syndrome virus by the name SARS, not a novel coronavirus, even though it was a novel coronavirus. Even the Middle East respiratory syndrome virus just got the name MERS, not another novel coronavirus. And that was a novel coronavirus too. It's almost like a novel coronavirus zoonotically evolved a publicist, if you ask me. And that's another thing. You ever wonder why a novel coronavirus immediately got a celebrity name like Coronavirus 19, or simply COVID-19 for the disease they say it caused? They say it's all because it was a coronavirus disease that was discovered in 2019. Abbreviated. But what if there were several novel coronaviruses that just suddenly zoonotically evolved? Would they name the disease COVID-19A and COVID-19B and so on and so on? SARS didn't get a disease named SARS-03 that I ever heard in the news. And how about MERS-08? Why didn't we ever hear about Ebola-16? In fact, the only virus that sprung up that I know in recent years that had a brand name for its disease was AIDS. And that was supposed to be caused by the HIV virus. It got great movies and plays on Broadway like Angels in America and Rent. I love that song about measuring a life. But AIDS did become very political, just like COVID-19. Maybe its publicist has a movie deal in mind. I don't know. Come to think of it, having a name like COVID-19 is a little bit of false advertising because no scientist has ever yet validated it under Koch's postulates, they say, as a disease actually caused by a novel coronavirus that looks and acts like the tough sister of SARS. Maybe you have to be a doctor to understand all of this nonsense. I'm just glad to be able to get back to the movies myself. Maybe a great mystery thriller. And that's another thing. You ever wonder why Dr. Fauci is able to look into the future and predict that a novel coronavirus is going to need new vaccines in the future and that patients will develop complications in the future? He must be a really smart guy. Most governors are still trying to figure out how to stop the novel coronavirus we have right now from spreading. And even one actually got infected recently. And even scientists are surprised just about the complications that it is causing, like conjunctivitis, high blood lipids, COVID toes, and even multi-inflammatory syndrome in kids. They're scared to go to school. I don't even know what that is, but it sounds bad. And if Fauci says it's a problem, that's good enough for Mark Waters, so it should be good enough for me. But it's kind of funny. that all of these new diseases that scientists can't seem to figure out are also complications when you get tear gassed in China. In fact, in China, when protesters get out of hand, not only does Cuba introduce a resolution in the United Nations Human Rights Council to support them, wonderful people, they actually use tear gas that is outlawed in every other nation. The reason why is that while if you get tear gassed in front of the White House by the president and make the news about being oppressed, that tear gas is produced by heating a powder mixture of a compound at temperatures between negative 40 degrees, that's pretty cold, and positive 125 degrees Fahrenheit, to burn for only about 7 seconds to produce a cloud of riot agent called CS gas, or tear gas. An Army guy told me that, which is kind of like mace and pepper spray, but a little more powerful. And one single canister, they say, can produce an aerosol cloud that covers about 30 square meters, which is a pretty big area. But in China, the temperature they use to produce the aerosol cloud is as hot as 450 degrees Celsius, which is not the same as degrees Fahrenheit, because they use the metric system. But if we were to compare apples to apples instead of apples to oranges, we could say that our hottest grenade canister in the U.S. is only 125 degrees, like a nice day in Dubai. But their grenade canister in China is 842 degrees, or a little less than 1/5 the temperature inside a nuclear reactor. They get up to 5,100 degrees in a nuclear reactor, Fahrenheit, but only 2811 degrees Celsius, which is still way too hot for me. And hell is hotter. But when you build a fire, even for just a few seconds, to cause tear gas particles to dissolve into a vapor filled with what they call aerosols, Lindsay Marr talks a lot about those, or tiny particles smaller than 5 microns, really small, so that they begin to float around in the air instead of being propelled to the ground by gravity, operating kind of like a very hot nebulizer if you have asthma. I wouldn't want a nuclear reactor on my face. And now they can actually do this with vibrating mesh, a scientific breakthrough with no heat at all. Why didn't the advanced Chinese think of that for their tear gas, instead of recreating Chernobyl to put down protesters, I wonder? Wait, now where was I? Oh yes, when you use a lot of heat to produce these aerosols, small tiny particles, you end up creating enough heat to melt metals and decompose compounds that contain things like chlorine, which really isn't very environmental or very safe by itself, and may irritate your eyes and cause all kinds of other problems. And when that happens, the scientists say that you produce dioxins that are very, very toxic. In fact, if you were to breathe the tear gas, which is bad enough in itself if you've ever been tear gassed, ask Muriel Bowser, you are going to have some very long-term effects because they stay inside your body for at least 10 years and continue to accumulate. Some folks get cancer. Some folks experience developmental problems. Some folks experience problems with pregnancy. Some folks develop diabetes and high blood cholesterol and lipids. Some develop skin rashes. And wait a minute. A lot of these things sound like the complications arising in a novel coronavirus that Dr. Fauci knows are going to present problems for people even after they are cured. Just like what happens when you get tear gassed in China for protesting your rights. And And they must have been expecting a lot of protests in China because it just happened to become the fastest growing business in China back in August 2019, when they were producing stockpiles of high temperature burning smoke grenade canisters that they could not sell to anyone else because they are illegal everywhere in the world. Or maybe the Chinese president just likes stockpiling tons of tear gas canisters in the event that his people get out of control, pandemic control, and start running around spreading freedom protests all over the world. Then he can crack down decisively and save the world, I imagine. Just like he did with the novel coronavirus. Anywho, that's all for now, and I'm not Andy Rooney. And Mike Wallace isn't running for Congress, but Major Mike Webb is. If he could only get on the ballot. A lot of paperwork and court. Maybe nobody agrees with his science or religion. With liberty, honor, and excellence. By God, let's make America great again. Honest.
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.